Hey class, it's already week 2, so let's take a look at the overview really quick. This week we're going to be looking at objectives and alignment. In the first week we chose a topic and then we narrowed it down to be a little bit more specific so it wasn't too broad in order to teach in our 1-hour lesson time. And then we also took a quick view at the institutional outcomes to get ourselves familiar with that so that we could start using them this week. So this week, the assignment, we're going to be crafting 3 objectives that we're going to be using for the individual lesson that we're going to be teaching and developing throughout this course. In doing that, we're going to be using those institutional outcomes in order to make sure the objectives that we decide on line up with the institution that we're at. And then we're also going to be starting to look at assessments and other types of course mapping and course alignment processes of developing your lesson. So first of all, let's not forget we've got the YouTube video. That's the introduction. If you've not submitted that yet, please make sure you do that by Thursday of week 2. And then, of course, the objectives, outcomes, and alignments assignment, which is due at the end of week 2, Sunday by midnight. So let's jump right into week 2 and get started. So the first thing we're going to see after the overview video in week 2 is the assessment and alignment PDF. Please read through this. This is a quick PDF that's going to talk to you a little bit about why we do course alignment and course mapping, why it's important, and how do course and lesson objectives then ultimately lead into the full course, and then finally the institutional outcomes, and why it's important that we align all of those things together. And then we also have a textbook reading assignment in Why Teach. The textbook for this course, we're going to be reading pages 1 through 44. Sounds like a lot of pages, but this is a small book and the pages are quick and very easy to read. It will not take you long at all to move through this material. I hope that you find this book very easy to read and very just to the point and useful nuggets of teaching education. Moving down, this second section here is going to elaborate on what you have to do for your week 2 assignment, the objectives, outcomes, and alignments assignment. You will be clicking on this link right here in order to submit your assignment. So right here it shows you, scroll down and you'll do write submission. That's where you'll paste your URL and make it a hyperlink, and then just hit submit down here in the bottom right hand corner, and that is going to submit your assignment. But let's go back out into the week 2 module and look a little bit closer at this assignment. So in this assignment that we're preparing, we're going to look at 10 students, just kind of picking a number there. It doesn't really have to be specific to that, but we are given 1 hour in order to do our lesson. And you should have just about everything as far as materials that you need in order to teach this lesson. However, keep in mind looking forward when you actually develop a lesson plan in week 4 that you will be listing out your materials, but just know for right now you can choose whatever you want as materials. This week, however, we're not doing a full lesson plan. So right down here in bold, it says you're not doing a full lesson this week. What we're doing is we're going to be coming up with some objectives. And you have a template that you're going to be using and filling out and then turning in via Google Doc URL. So let's jump into that template and see what it looks like. So on the title page, you see I've already got some canned text here in your header. So this is APA format style. Make sure you are doing that according to that. If you have any questions with the APA style, please check the APA style help tab in the left-hand sidebar of the course module. But let's scroll down to page 2. This is our learning outcomes assessment form. Up here is just a little bit of information talking about objectives and then outcomes, assessment tools, and alignment. And you can see here we've got 3 rows that you're going to be including 1 row for each objective. So here you're going to list your course objective. So for example, identify the signs of an asthma exacerbation. That's a good objective for your course. How does it align with those institutional outcomes that we looked at last week? Well, this one happens to align with number 1, which is critical thinking. So in this box, we're going to put number 1, critical thinking, because the course objective aligns with the institutional outcome. And it's important that we link those 2 things together. Additionally, we want to identify what type of learning is this course objective actually doing? What is it going to accomplish? And in this example, it is going to be introducing subject material to our students. So it is at the introductory level. And you can see here, introduction, reinforce, and mastery are the 3 levels, and we will define those below. So if you have any questions like what does each one of those actually mean, just scroll down a little bit and you'll see that. We'll scroll there in just a second. The last thing that you'll be filling in this week is an assessment tool that's utilized to provide verification that you actually met that objective. So here's where we're kind of looking forward as to what is our quiz or test, what is the simulation or lab experience look like that we're going to give to our students or patients so that they can complete it, and then we'll have record and demonstration of them actually being able to identify the signs of an asthma exacerbation, which was our objective. So here you can see an example. Students will list their most common signs of an exacerbation. This list will be copied and handed in, and a copy sent home for future reference. So this allows me to keep a copy in order to demonstrate that they've met the requirements, and it also allows them to take a copy of that home for future reference so that they can know their signs of their asthma exacerbations. Now this last column here is recommendations to continue or modify the student learning pathway. We're not going to be looking at that this week. That's going to be completed at the very end of this course in week 7. And what it's intended to do is to look back after we've prepared the course, after we've actually taught it, and we've seen how students have performed on our assessments. What is it that we might want to go in and change? Do we need to update some of our material? Do we need to provide better examples? Do we need more hands-on learning? Or maybe we need to be better or more clear in our lecturing material? Any of those things, whatever it might be that you just identify that needs to be corrected, this is where you're just going to briefly put in there, again, at week 7, after you've done all of the work and you've presented all the material, here's what we might change. So for this week, do not put anything in that area because we're not there yet. But do remember that we're going to be using this sheet again in week 7. So your week 2 assignment, you're going to want to keep that in Google Drive because then you're going to use that same one in week 7, and all you're going to have to do is fill out this last column. Okay, we'll scroll down a little bit. Very important that you do not forget about this, a brief paragraph explaining the process that you took in order to come up with your objectives, how you went through the alignment process, and then your assessment tools. Just talk through that, explain it to me. Reference any learning material that you found online that supports why you did what you did, that supports the mapping and the alignments. Anything from the text that you want to include, reference and cite those items here in this paragraph explaining how you went through this process. And then of course the area for the references are listed here underneath. Bottom hand, this is just information for you. It reviews the institutional outcomes, which we looked at in week 1 once more. And then it also gives you those definitions of the different types of learning styles or for your objective. So you see the introductory, reinforcement, and emphasize here in this area to define this section here for what type of learning it is. Okay, let's pop back over to Blackboard. Looking forward to week 3, we're going to be doing a quiz. So we're going to kind of take a break from preparing our lesson in this course. But then in week 4, we're going to be doing a full lesson plan based off of the information you've submitted the first 2 weeks. So your topic and then your objectives and assessment pieces are all going to be then filed into and carried over into the week 4 lesson plan. Week 5, we'll do another quiz, kind of a test online here in Blackboard. Week 6, we're going to do a Google Docs or a Google Slide PowerPoint presentation of the lesson plan. And then in week 7, you're going to be doing an infographic for your lesson plan, as well as that last column of the template that we looked at this week in order to close that loop and go full circle to see what is it that we need to modify within our lesson in order to improve it moving forward. Just a reminder, make sure that you do turn in that template, that you save a copy of that before you start modifying it. That way you've got a copy of it in your Google Drive, and that you name it your last name and week 2. And then again, this is the same module as you saw in week 1 for your video introduction for YouTube. So we'll be turning that in, which is due Thursday of this week. As always, if you guys have any questions, please make sure you check out the study hall and post to that if you need to. Also, the APA help section, the YouTube and Google help section here as well. And then, of course, always reach out to me by email if you've got any questions. All right, that wraps up week 2. So let's get to work, and I'll see you guys online.